If this were a memoir,
Yeah.
I would put juicy things from my own life.
Right, right. Like, what kind of things would you put in there that nobody knows?
Well, I guess the biggest thing that nobody knows about me is I'm a deeply closeted gay man.
What? You're a gay man?
I'm not gay. If this were a memoir, I would tell about my wife. What a battle axe. How do you feel about a woman? She's supposed to be my life partner. I look in the mirror the other day and I says to her, I says, honey, I look in the mirror and all I see is a fat, ugly old man. And I need you to give me a compliment. She says, all right then, your eyesight is damn near perfect. I said, you dirty dog. I tell you, until I met my wife, I always felt incomplete. Now I'm finished. My wife went into a coma.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And the doctor said to me, there's one way to wake her up, but it's a little unconventional. You go in there and you have oral sex with her. I said, by God. He says, I've seen it work. I said, well, I'm willing to try. So I go in there, I'm in there about 5 minutes, and I come out. I said, Doc, she's choking.
Now, when did you first start smoking?
I started smoking as a kid, like when I was, I think I was like 14, and I thought, I'll look really cool, like if I start smoking, because I didn't get along with anybody. So I started smoking. Wouldn't you know it, I did look cool.
Now, did people bother you a lot when you're smoking? Were people pissed off when...
Yeah, people don't like when you smoke, you know. They're bothered, like, I gotta admit, though, secondhand smoke is bad. Like, I don't like, when I smoked, I didn't like secondhand smoke. Yeah. You know? I like that first-hand smoke, because you get to suck it right out of the cigarette, you know? And the secondhand, any fucking thing that's already been ingested by someone is not as good, you know? You know what I mean? Like a pork sandwich is delicious, but after a digested pork sandwich, that's fucking shit.
Do you think advertising brings kids to smoking? You know, there's a lot of fight with the Joe Camel thing. Do you think they really...
He doesn't even look like a fucking camel. He looks so much like a cock, because you know how it's usually subliminal?
Yeah.
Where you have to find the cock, right? This character, you have to find the goddamn camel.
Line 2. We got a phone call for you. Although I can't believe they'd still be on the line after this departure. What motivated you to quit?
My doctor went in, he said, you probably have an oral fixation, which you know what that means. Let's not kid ourselves, right? That's why I always smoke, like, cigarettes instead of cigars, because if I'm gonna have I like a little white, thin cock. I was just saying, if I ever was gay, if they, like, suddenly made it mandatory or something, then I would choose the smallest cock, and I would like a guy that came fast. I don't know. I thought the subject was cock.
No cocks is next week.
I'm sorry. Does that answer your question? I said, what do you do for a living there, sir? You know, if you don't mind me asking. You know, what do you do for a living? I'm a nightclub comic, I tell the guy. He says, I'm a professor of logic. Oh. So the guy says, logic. Now, what the hell is that? I never heard tell of that. He says, why don't I give you an example? So I said, fair enough. Why don't you do that? So the guy says, well, he says, let me ask you a question. He says, do you own a doghouse? So I go, yes, I do. He says, well, then that means you probably have a dog. I said, yes. He says, well, that means you're likely you have a family if you have a dog. I said, yes, I do. He said, well, then that means you got kids, you're married. I said, yes, I am. He says, well, then you're a heterosexual man. I said, yes, sir, I am. He says, well, you see, that's logic. So I said, well, I won't waste any more of your time there, neighbor. And I said, I'll see you later. Anyways, the guy goes, what's new with you? I go, well, I had an interesting thing happen to me today. I said, I met my neighbor. And he goes, oh, yeah? I go, he had a hell of an interesting job. I said, he's a professor of logic. So the guy says, is that so? He says, professor of logic. He goes, what the hell is that, logic? But I said, I'll give you an example if you want to hear an example. Let me ask you a question. Do you own a doghouse? And the guy goes, no, I don't own a doghouse. So I says to the guy, says, oh, yeah, you're one of them gays. My buddy tells me, he goes, hey, you should go to one of them bed and breakfasts. He comes to the door, old guy, you know, but I'd say 80, 85 years old. Old Harold Delaney was his name. I'm ready to go to sleep, and a knock comes on the door, right? A knock on my bedroom door.
Right.
So I figure, uh-oh, old Harold Delaney wants to have sex with me. Of course, that's not, I didn't come to Victoria to have sex with old Harold Delaney. Then I hear him, he goes, well, you ought to play some Scrabble.
Oh, Scrabble.
Yeah, so I say, okay, that's good.
Sure.
I'll play some Scrabble. And so I get the first turn. So I make rabbit, you know?
Pretty good.
It's a good word. And then I do it pretty quick. I take like a couple of minutes. And then old Harold Delaney, he takes like a half hour to like get his word. And the whole time he's not talking, he's not telling me old stories, 'cause I like hearing old stories, you know? And instead, it was like for a half hour, it's just Harold Delaney going. He comes up with his word, it's hat. That's his word, yeah. Hat. So he puts it, and he takes the word hat, and then he puts it like way in the corner on that triple letter score.
Right.
The triple word, the red one
Right.
that you want to get to.
Yeah, sure.
But you can't just put it there.
No, it's got to have some relation to rabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to move up there, you know. Time going by, and then every word, and I was coming up with good words. You know, I had sleigh, you know, a sleigh ride, and avocado.
Whoa.
It was a 7-letter word.
Yep.
You get 50 extra points. I'm still way behind him.
He's just freelancing the board.
Yeah. Yes. And so finally I decided I'm gonna I gotta say something, you know? So and all his words were like cup and hat, and I think it was just like things he'd see around the room, you know? A moth goes into a podiatrist's office, and the podiatrist's office says, what's the problem? And the moth says, what's the problem? Where do I begin, man? I walk here and there. I don't know where to turn to. My youngest, Alexandria, she fell in the cold of last year. The cold took her down, as it did many of us. As much as it pains me to say, when I look in his eyes, all I see is the same cowardice that I catch when I take a glimpse of my own face in the mirror. If only the cowardice was stronger, then perhaps I could bring myself to reach over to that cocked and loaded gun that lays on the bedside behind me. Sometimes I feel like a spider, even though I'm a moth, just barely hanging on to my web with an everlasting fire underneath me. I'm not feeling good. And so the doctor says, Moth, man, you're troubled. But you should be seeing a psychiatrist. Why on earth did you come here? And then the moth said, because the light was on.
He gets a genie or something that gives you wishes and a lamp, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so he's like, oh, no, that's not it. He goes to his whole head is a giant pumpkin. That's how the joke starts. Mm-hmm. It's like a giant pumpkin, and then his friend goes, what happened? He's like, I found this genie in a lamp, and he gave me 3 wishes. And he's like, what happened? He goes, well, the first wish, I wished for like $100 million, and I got it. And then for my second wish, I wished for like a beautiful lady, and I got her. And the guy's like, yeah, but what happened? He's like, the third wish, that's where I really blew it. And the guy goes, what happened? He goes, I wished for a giant pumpkin head.